Long before written memory, before kings carved their names in stone or empires stretched across continents, humanity gathered quietly along the fertile banks of two rivers. These rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, flowed steadily through a land later called Mesopotamia, meaning the land between rivers. It was here, thousands of years ago, that the earliest chapters of human civilization were written, not in books, but in mud, stone, and shared survival. As the sun rose gently over vast floodplains, early humans learned to read the rhythm of the land. Seasonal floods deposited rich soil, turning the earth dark and fertile. This gift of nature allowed small groups of hunter-gatherers to settle, plant seeds, and wait. For the first time in human history, people stayed in one place long enough to call it home. Agriculture was not a sudden invention, but a slow understanding, an agreement between humans and the land. Villages emerged quietly. Simple mud brick homes clustered together for safety and cooperation. Wheat and barley grew in organized fields. Domesticated animals grazed nearby. With stable food came time to think, to plan, to remember. Tools improved. Pottery appeared. Trade routes slowly formed as communities exchanged surplus goods. Civilization was not born in a moment of triumph, but in patience and repetition. Over centuries, villages expanded into cities. One of the earliest was Uruk, a settlement that grew into a bustling urban center by around 3500 BCE. Its streets echoed with footsteps of farmers, craftsmen, traders, and priests. At its heart stood towering temples called ziggurats, rising step by step toward the sky. These structures were not merely buildings, but symbols of humanity's relationship with the divine and the cosmos. Religion shaped daily life in Mesopotamia. The people believed the world was governed by powerful gods who controlled floods, storms, fertility, and fate itself. Each city honored its own patron deity, and rituals were performed to maintain balance between heaven and earth. The gods were not distant or forgiving, they were unpredictable, much like the rivers that sustained life but could also destroy it. As cities grew more complex, so did the need for organization. This necessity gave birth to one of humanity's greatest inventions, writing. Around 3200 BCE, Mesopotamian scribes began pressing reed styluses into soft clay tablets, creating wedge-shaped symbols known as cuneiform. At first, these marks recorded grain, livestock, and trade. Over time, they captured prayers, laws, poetry, and stories. Through writing, history gained a voice. The Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest surviving literary works, emerged from this land. It told of friendship, loss, power, and the search for immortality, questions that still echo in the human heart today. In these stories, we hear the thoughts of people who lived over 4,000 years ago, revealing how little the human spirit has changed. Governance also evolved. Kings rose to power, claiming divine authority to rule. One of the most famous was Hammurabi of Babylon, who reigned around 1750 BCE. His legacy endures through the Code of Hammurabi, a detailed set of laws carved into stone. These laws govern trade, labor, family life, and justice, reflecting an early attempt to create order in an increasingly complex society. Mesopotamia was never a single empire, but a shifting mosaic of cultures: Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, each rising, falling, and influencing the next. War was common, yet so was exchange. Ideas, technologies, and beliefs traveled along roads and rivers, shaping neighboring civilizations and laying foundations for the ancient world. Despite its achievements, life in Mesopotamia was fragile. Floods could fail or overwhelm. Droughts could starve cities. Invasions could erase generations of progress. Yet each time, humanity rebuilt. Bricks were stacked again. Fields were replanted. Stories were retold. Civilization endured because humans adapted, remembered, and hoped. As night settles over the ancient plains, imagine the quiet glow of oil lamps flickering in clay homes. The distant sound of water flowing endlessly between riverbanks. The same stars above that watch us now once watched over the first cities of mankind. In Mesopotamia, humanity learned not just how to survive, but how to record its journey, leaving behind the first footprints of history. As the deserts of North Africa stretched endlessly beneath the sun, a single river carved a path of life through the sand. The Nile flowed steadily from the heart of Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, flooding its banks each year with remarkable precision. Along this river, one of the most enduring civilizations in human history took shape. Ancient Egypt did not rise in chaos or conquest alone, but in harmony with the rhythms of nature itself. Each year, the Nile flooded predictably, leaving behind rich black soil that transformed barren land into fertile fields. This dependable cycle gave the people of Egypt a rare gift: stability. Crops grew reliably. Food surpluses increased. Communities thrived without the constant fear of starvation. Unlike other regions, Egypt's geography offered natural protection, bordered by deserts and seas that limited invasion. This isolation allowed its culture to evolve slowly and consistently over thousands of years. Villages grew along the riverbanks, their homes built from mud, brick and reed. Life revolved around the Nile: fishing, farming, transport, and trade all depended on its waters. Boats moved goods and people with ease, connecting settlements from the delta to the southern cataracts. The river was more than a resource, it was sacred, believed to be a divine force sustaining life itself. At the heart of Egyptian society stood the pharaoh, a ruler unlike any other. The pharaoh was not only king but also a living god, believed to be the earthly embodiment of divine order, known as Ma'at. His duty was to maintain balance in the universe, between gods and people, chaos and harmony, life and death. Loyalty to the pharaoh was loyalty to the cosmos itself. Religion shaped every aspect of Egyptian life. The gods were many, each governing a force of nature or aspect of existence. Ra sailed across the sky as the sun god. Osiris ruled the afterlife. Isis embodied motherhood and magic. Temples rose along the Nile as centers of worship, learning, and economic power. Rituals were performed daily to ensure the favor of the gods and the continuation of order. The Egyptians believed deeply in life after death. Death was not an end, but a transition. This belief gave rise to one of the civilization's most iconic practices: mummification. Bodies were carefully preserved to house the soul in the afterlife. Tombs were filled with food, tools, and treasures, preparing the deceased for eternity. The most powerful were buried in monumental structures designed to last forever. Among these monuments, none are more enduring than the pyramids. Built during the Old Kingdom, the pyramids of Giza rose from the desert as symbols of divine power and human determination. Constructed with astonishing precision, these massive stone structures required decades of labor, careful planning, and deep knowledge of mathematics and astronomy. They were not built by slaves alone, but by skilled workers serving a sacred purpose. Writing also flourished in Egypt. Hieroglyphs adorned temple walls and tombs, combining art and language into a single expression. Scribes recorded history, prayers, medical knowledge, and administrative records. Papyrus scrolls preserved wisdom, allowing ideas to endure beyond a single lifetime. Through writing, Egypt spoke across centuries. Science and engineering advanced steadily. Egyptian architects mastered stone construction. Physicians practiced surgery and medicine using detailed observations of the human body. Astronomers tracked the stars, aligning temples and monuments with celestial events. Time itself was measured through calendars based on the Nile's cycles and the movement of the heavens. Despite its stability, Egypt was not untouched by conflict. Dynasties rose and fell. Periods of unity were followed by fragmentation. Foreign powers eventually challenged Egyptian dominance. Yet even as political power faded, Egyptian culture endured. Its art, religion, and ideas influenced civilizations far beyond its borders. As night falls over the Nile, the water reflects the stars just as it did thousands of years ago. Palm trees sway gently in the desert breeze. Stone temples stand silent, their walls still whispering prayers carved long ago. Ancient Egypt was not merely a civilization of the past, it was a bridge between the human and the eternal, a testament to humanity's desire to be remembered. In the quiet flow of the Nile, Egypt found its rhythm. In stone and story, it found immortality. Far to the east of Mesopotamia and beyond the deserts of Egypt, another ancient civilization quietly flourished along the wide plains of the Indus River. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization emerged around 3300 BCE. Unlike many ancient societies defined by conquest or monumental rulers, this civilization revealed itself through balance, planning, and remarkable restraint. The Indus River flowed from the Himalayas toward the Arabian Sea, carrying with it seasonal floods that nourished the land. Along its banks, people built settlements that would grow into some of the most advanced cities of the ancient world. Harappa and Mohenjo-daro were not chaotic clusters of homes, but carefully designed urban centers, laid out with precision and foresight. Streets ran in straight lines, intersecting at right angles. Homes were constructed from standardized baked bricks, a rarity in the ancient world. Almost every house had access to wells, bathing areas, and drainage systems. Covered sewers ran beneath the streets, carrying wastewater away efficiently. This attention to sanitation and public health suggests a society deeply concerned with cleanliness and communal well-being. Despite their sophistication, the rulers of the Indus Valley remain unknown. No grand palaces, royal tombs, or monumental statues of kings have been found. Power may have been distributed, or leadership may have been subtle and collective. This absence of visible authority stands in contrast to other ancient civilizations and hints at a culture grounded more in civic order than in displays of dominance. Trade played a central role in Indus society. Archaeological evidence reveals seals, beads, and pottery found far beyond the valley, reaching Mesopotamia and Central Asia. Standardized weights and measures suggest regulated commerce and economic fairness. The people of the Indus Valley were not isolated. They were active participants in a vast network of ancient exchange. Their craftsmanship was refined and elegant. Artisans carved intricate seals depicting animals, symbols, and possibly deities. Beads made from carnelian, lapis lazuli, and shell were polished with remarkable skill. Pottery was functional yet beautiful, painted with geometric patterns that reflected order and symmetry. At the heart of Indus cities stood large public structures. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro remains one of the most intriguing. Built with waterproof bricks and carefully designed drainage, it may have been used for ritual purification or communal ceremonies. Water, once again, appears central to spiritual and daily life. The Indus script remains undeciphered. Short inscriptions appear on seals and pottery, suggesting a writing system used for administration or trade. Yet no long texts or monumental inscriptions survive. This silence has left much of the civilization's beliefs and governance open to interpretation, adding to its enduring mystery. Religion in the Indus Valley is suggested through symbols rather than grand temples. Figurines of seated figures, sacred animals, and fertility symbols hint at spiritual practices connected to nature, balance, and renewal. Unlike later empires, religion here seems intimate rather than imposing. For centuries, the Indus Valley civilization thrived in relative stability. Then, gradually, its cities declined. Around 1900 BCE, urban centers were abandoned. Climate change, shifting river courses, and prolonged drought likely disrupted agriculture and trade. There is little evidence of violent invasion. Instead, the civilization seems to have faded quietly, its people dispersing into smaller rural communities. Yet the legacy of the Indus Valley did not disappear. Its urban planning, water management, and craft traditions influenced later cultures of South Asia. Concepts of cleanliness, standardized measurement, and settlement organization echo through time, embedded in the region's history. As night settles over the ancient ruins, the grid-like streets lie silent beneath the stars. Wells remain dry. Bricks endure where voices have faded. The Indus Valley civilization reminds us that greatness does not always announce itself with conquest or spectacle. Sometimes, it is found in order, restraint, and a deep respect for community. In its quiet precision, the Indus Valley speaks across millennia, an ancient civilization that chose balance over power, and left behind a legacy of thoughtful design and human harmony. In the vast eastern lands of Asia, a river carved its way through mountains, plains, and memory. Known as the Yellow River, or Huanghe, its waters carried fine loess soil that tinted the flow with a golden hue. Along its unpredictable banks, one of the world's oldest and most enduring civilizations slowly emerged. Ancient China was shaped not only by the river's gifts, but by its dangers, teaching its people resilience, patience, and order. The Yellow River flooded often and without warning. While it enriched the soil, it also destroyed homes and fields, earning the name China's Sorrow. To survive, early communities learned cooperation. Dikes were built, canals dug, and land carefully managed. These shared efforts laid the foundation for a society that valued collective responsibility and long-term planning. By around 2000 BCE, early dynasties began to form. The Xia dynasty, though partly legendary, represents the transition from scattered tribes to organized rule. It was followed by the Shang dynasty, the first historically confirmed Chinese dynasty. Under the Shang, cities developed, bronze technology advanced, and a structured system of governance took shape. Shang society was deeply spiritual. Kings acted as intermediaries between humans and the divine, communicating with ancestors and gods through ritual. Oracle bones, animal bones and turtle shells, were heated and cracked, and their patterns interpreted as messages from the spirit world. These inscriptions became the earliest known form of Chinese writing, linking language, religion, and authority. Bronze defined the Shang era. Weapons, tools, and ritual vessels were cast with remarkable skill, often decorated with intricate patterns and symbolic animals. Control of bronze production strengthened royal power and enabled the rise of a warrior elite. Yet these objects were not merely practical, they reflected a worldview where art, ritual, and function were inseparable. As centuries passed, the Shang dynasty gave way to the Zhou. With this transition came a profound idea that would shape Chinese history for millennia: the mandate of heaven. According to this belief, rulers governed with divine approval, but only as long as they ruled justly. Natural disasters, famine, or rebellion were seen as signs that heaven had withdrawn its support. Power, therefore, carried moral responsibility. Under the Zhou, feudal systems spread, agriculture expanded, and philosophy began to flourish. Thinkers questioned the nature of order, virtue, and harmony. Though many of these philosophies would mature later, their roots were planted during this era of reflection and reform. Daily life in ancient China was tied closely to the land. Millet and rice were cultivated. Silk production began, turning delicate threads into a treasure sought across continents. Families lived in close-knit communities, guided by traditions, rituals, and respect for ancestors. The family unit became the foundation of social order. Chinese writing evolved steadily, preserving history and knowledge. Characters were not phonetic alone, but symbolic, allowing ideas to transcend spoken language. This continuity of writing helped unify culture across vast distances and generations. Despite internal stability, ancient China faced constant threats from nomadic tribes beyond its borders. Defense became essential. Fortifications were constructed, and early versions of what would later become the Great Wall began to appear. These barriers symbolized the line between the settled agricultural world and the untamed frontier. Like other ancient civilizations, China experienced cycles of unity and division. Floods, droughts, and conflict tested its endurance. Yet each collapse was followed by renewal. Institutions adapted. Ideas survived. Civilization endured not because it avoided hardship, but because it absorbed and learned from it. As night descends over the Yellow River Valley, mist rises from the water. Bronze vessels rest in temple halls. Oracle bones lie buried beneath the earth, carrying messages from a forgotten past. Ancient China was not built in a single moment, but shaped through centuries of effort, belief, and adaptation. In the flowing waters of the Yellow River, one can hear the quiet persistence of a civilization that learned to endure, to balance heaven and earth, and to carry its wisdom forward through time. At the crossroads of continents, where Asia meets Europe, the rugged highlands of Anatolia gave rise to a civilization shaped by mountains, rivers, and trade routes. This land, rich in minerals and guarded by natural barriers, became home to one of the ancient world's most influential yet often overlooked powers, the Hittites. Emerging around 1700 BCE, the Hittite civilization bridged the early world of bronze and the coming age of iron. Anatolia's geography encouraged connection. Caravans passed through its valleys, carrying goods, ideas, and technologies between Mesopotamia, the Aegean, and the Levant. Early Anatolian settlements thrived as trading hubs, linking distant cultures. Long before the Hittites rose to dominance, this land was already a meeting place of civilizations. The Hittite capital, Hattusa, was built among hills and fortified with massive stone walls. Gates carved with lions and sphinxes guarded the city, symbolizing strength and divine protection. Inside, palaces, temples, and archives reflected a highly organized society governed by law, diplomacy, and ritual. Unlike many ancient empires that ruled through fear alone, the Hittites valued written agreements. They are remembered as pioneers of international diplomacy. Treaties were carefully recorded on clay tablets, binding enemies and allies alike. One of the world's earliest known peace treaties, signed with Egypt after the Battle of Kadesh, survives as a testament to their political sophistication. Hittite kings ruled with the support of councils and legal systems. Law codes emphasized compensation over brutal punishment, reflecting a structured and pragmatic approach to justice. The king was powerful, yet not absolute. Authority was balanced through tradition, law, and religious duty. Religion played a central role in Hittite life. Their pantheon was vast, often described as the 1,000 gods of Hutti. Rather than replacing the gods of conquered lands, the Hittites absorbed them, respecting local beliefs. This openness helped stabilize their empire and reduce rebellion, creating unity through inclusion. One of the Hittites' greatest contributions to history was their early use of iron. While bronze remained dominant, iron tools and weapons began to appear under Hittite control. Iron was stronger and more abundant than bronze, marking a quiet technological shift that would eventually transform warfare, agriculture, and civilization itself. The Hittite military was disciplined and strategic. Chariots dominated their armies, providing speed and power on the battlefield. Yet even in war, the Hittites recorded events with detail and reflection, leaving behind archives that reveal their concerns, decisions, and beliefs. Daily life in the Hittite world revolved around agriculture and craftsmanship. Farmers cultivated grain and raised livestock in the Anatolian highlands. Artisans worked stone, clay, and metal, producing tools, seals, and ritual objects. Writing, adapted from Mesopotamian cuneiform, preserved laws, myths, and correspondence. Despite their strength, the Hittite Empire was not immune to collapse. Around 1200 BCE, a series of disruptions swept across the eastern Mediterranean. Trade routes failed. Cities were abandoned. Invasions, internal strife, and climate pressures combined to weaken the empire. Hattusa was eventually deserted, its walls left to weather the centuries, yet the Hittites did not vanish entirely. Their influence lived on through successor states and the spread of iron technology. Their legal traditions, diplomatic practices, and cultural openness shaped the ancient Near East long after their political power faded. As night falls over the ruins of Hattusa, stone walls stand silent beneath the stars. Wind moves through broken gates once guarded by lions. Clay tablets lie buried, still holding voices of kings and scribes. The Hittites remind us that civilizations do not endure through conquest alone, but through adaptability, law, and the willingness to learn from others. In the highlands of Anatolia, between stone and iron, the Hittites forged a legacy that quietly helped shape the modern world. Between the shores of mainland Greece and the islands scattered across the Aegean Sea, a maritime world emerged that was shaped by wind, water, and trade. Long before classical Greece, two distinct civilizations flourished here, the Minoans of Crete and the Mycenaeans of the mainland. Together, they formed a bridge between the ancient Near East and the later Greek world. The Minoans rose first, around 3000 BCE, on the island of Crete. Surrounded by the sea, they became expert sailors, navigating the Aegean with confidence and skill. Their ships carried goods, ideas, and culture between Egypt, Anatolia, and the Greek mainland. Trade, rather than conquest, lay at the heart of Minoan power. Minoan cities were unlike the fortified settlements of other ancient societies. At Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea, sprawling palace complexes spread openly across the landscape, without defensive walls. These palaces were centers of administration, ritual, and storage, filled with courtyards, workshops, and colorful frescoes that depicted nature, festivals, and everyday life. Art flourished in Minoan Crete. Walls were painted with dolphins, lilies, dancers, and bull-leaping scenes, capturing movement and vitality. The natural world was celebrated rather than feared. Women appeared prominently in religious and social roles, suggesting a society with unique cultural values for its time. Religion in Minoan culture remains mysterious. Sacred caves, mountaintop sanctuaries, and ritual objects point to a deep spiritual connection with nature. Bulls held special significance, symbolizing strength and fertility. The legendary labyrinth and the myth of the Minotaur likely echo distant memories of Minoan rituals and palace layouts. Despite their prosperity, the Minoans faced sudden disruption. Around 1600 BCE, a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera sent ash across the region and triggered powerful tsunamis. While the civilization survived initially, its dominance weakened. Over time, control of the Aegean shifted to a new power rising on the Greek mainland, the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans were warriors, builders, and rulers. Emerging around 1600 BCE, they constructed fortified cities such as Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos. Massive stone walls, known as Cyclopean walls, surrounded their citadels, reflecting a world shaped by conflict and competition. At the heart of Mycenaean cities stood palaces ruled by kings known as wanaks. These palaces controlled agriculture, trade, and military activity. Unlike the open Minoan complexes, Mycenaean palaces were defensive and hierarchical, designed to protect power and resources. The Mycenaeans adopted and adapted many aspects of Minoan culture, including writing. Linear B script, used primarily for administrative records, represents the earliest known form of the Greek language. Through these tablets, we glimpse a society focused on organization, taxation, and control. Mycenaean warriors dominated the Aegean world. Their influence extended across islands and into Anatolia. Later Greek legends, including the tales of the Trojan War, are rooted in this era. Though wrapped in myth, these stories reflect a real world of rival kingdoms, alliances, and warfare. Despite their strength, the Mycenaean world also collapsed around 1200 BCE, during the same widespread upheavals that affected the Hittites and other Bronze Age civilizations. Cities were destroyed or abandoned. Trade networks failed. Writing disappeared. Greece entered a period of silence and transition known as the Dark Age, yet the legacy of the Aegean civilizations endured. Minoan art and Mycenaean language became foundations for classical Greece. Myths preserved memories of fallen palaces and heroic kings. From the ruins of Knossos and Mycenae, a new civilization would eventually rise. As evening falls over the Aegean Sea, waves gently strike rocky shores. Frescoes fade in the quiet halls of ancient palaces. Stone walls cast long shadows beneath the stars. The Minoans and Mycenaeans remind us that civilization is shaped not only by land and power, but by the sea, by memory, and by the stories we carry forward. From the scattered islands of the Aegean Sea to the rocky mountains of the mainland, ancient Greece emerged as a civilization shaped by landscape, sea, and imagination. Unlike the vast river empires of the East, Greece was divided by natural barriers. Mountains separated valleys. Seas separated islands. From this fragmentation grew independence, diversity, and a culture that prized inquiry and debate. After the collapse of the Mycenaean world, Greece entered centuries of gradual recovery. Small communities formed, each centered around a city and its surrounding land. These city-states, known as polis, developed unique identities. Among them, Athens and Sparta would become the most influential, offering contrasting visions of how society should be ordered. Greek life revolved around the polis. Citizenship carried responsibility as well as privilege. Public spaces such as the agora became centers of political discussion, trade, and social life. For the first time in history, large groups of citizens actively participated in governance, debating laws, and shaping their collective future. In Athens, democracy slowly emerged. While limited by modern standards, it represented a radical idea that ordinary citizens could govern themselves. Decisions were made through assemblies, councils, and courts. Power was shared, questioned, and challenged. This culture of participation encouraged critical thinking and public speech. In contrast, Sparta developed a society built on discipline and military strength. From childhood, Spartan citizens were trained for warfare. Individual desire was subordinated to the needs of the state. While Athens valued expression and creativity, Sparta prized order and endurance. Together, they represented the range of Greek political thought. Religion and myth remained central to Greek life. The gods of Olympus, Zeus, Hera, Athena, Apollo, and many others, were believed to influence every aspect of the world. Unlike distant deities, Greek gods were human in emotion and flaw. Myths explain the origins of the world, the nature of suffering, and the meaning of heroism. Greek art reflected this human focus. Sculptors sought ideal proportions, capturing movement, balance, and emotion in stone and bronze. Temples such as the Parthenon were built with mathematical precision, honoring the gods while celebrating human achievement. Beauty and reason were seen as interconnected expressions of truth. Philosophy emerged as one of Greece's greatest contributions. Thinkers began to question the nature of reality, knowledge, and ethics. Socrates challenged assumptions through dialogue. Plato explored ideals beyond the physical world. Aristotle observed nature and classified knowledge. These philosophers laid foundations for science, logic, and moral inquiry that still shape human thought. The Greeks also advanced literature and drama. Epic poems like the Iliad and the Odyssey preserve stories of heroism, fate, and the human struggle. Tragedies and comedies were performed in open-air theaters, exploring themes of justice, pride, love, and loss. These stories allowed society to reflect on itself. Despite cultural achievements, Greece was not free from conflict. City-states often warred with one another. External threats also loomed. When the Persian Empire advanced westward, Greek city-states united in defense of their independence. Battles at Marathon, Thermopylae, and Salamis became symbols of resistance against overwhelming power. Victory over Persia brought confidence, but also rivalry. The Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta weakened Greece, leaving it vulnerable to new forces. Eventually, Macedonia rose under King Philip II and his son, Alexander the Great. Greek culture would spread across a vast empire, reaching Egypt, Persia, and beyond. Though political independence faded, Greek ideas endured. Language, philosophy, art, and science continued to influence the Mediterranean world and later civilizations. Greece's true power lay not in conquest, but in thought. As night settles over the ruins of ancient temples, columns stand silhouetted against the stars. Stone theaters sit silent where voices once echoed with poetry and debate. In ancient Greece, humanity learned to question itself, to seek meaning, balance, and truth. These questions still travel with us, carried forward through time. Along the banks of the Tiber River, in a land of rolling hills and fertile plains, a small settlement slowly took form. At first, it was unremarkable, one of many villages scattered across the Italian peninsula. Yet from these humble beginnings arose ancient Rome, a civilization that would reshape the ancient world through law, engineering, and enduring institutions. Rome's early history blended myth and memory. Legends spoke of Romulus and Remus, twin brothers raised by a she-wolf, and of a city founded through struggle and determination. While the stories were symbolic, they reflected Rome's identity, resilient, disciplined, and forged through conflict. In its earliest phase, Rome was ruled by kings, but power soon shifted to a republic. Authority was shared between elected officials, councils, and assemblies. The Roman Republic valued civic duty, discipline, and loyalty to the state. Citizens were expected to serve in government and in war, binding personal identity to the survival of Rome itself. Rome's strength lay in organization. Laws were written and publicly displayed, ensuring consistency and accountability. The 12 Tables established legal principles that applied to all citizens, forming the foundation of Roman law. These concepts, justice, contracts, and rights, would echo across centuries and civilizations. As Rome expanded, it encountered rival powers. Through a series of wars, Rome gradually conquered the Italian peninsula and beyond. Its armies were disciplined and adaptable, built around the legion, a unit designed for flexibility and endurance. Roads were constructed to move troops efficiently, binding the empire together with stone and precision. Engineering became Rome's signature. Aqueducts carried fresh water across vast distances. Bridges spanned rivers. Amphitheaters rose in city centers, hosting spectacles that reinforced Roman identity. Concrete allowed structures to endure long after the empire itself faded. Daily life in Rome varied greatly. Wealthy citizens lived in villas adorned with mosaics and gardens, while the poor crowded into apartment buildings known as insulae. Markets bustled with goods from across the empire, grain from Egypt, silk from the east, metals from distant provinces. Rome became a city of global exchange. Religion in Rome evolved over time. Early Romans honored household gods and local spirits. As the empire grew, foreign deities were absorbed into Roman worship. This religious flexibility allowed diverse cultures to coexist under Roman rule. Later, Christianity emerged, spreading quietly at first, then transforming the empire from within. Despite its achievements, the Republic faced internal strain. Inequality widened. Power concentrated in the hands of generals and elites. Civil wars erupted. Eventually, the Republic gave way to empire under Augustus, who brought stability while maintaining the appearance of republican tradition. The Roman Empire reached its height in the 2nd century CE, stretching from Britain to the Middle East. Pax Romana, a period of relative peace, allowed trade, culture, and infrastructure to flourish. Cities thrived. Law unified diverse peoples. Latin became a shared language of administration and culture, yet no empire is eternal. Over time, economic pressure, political instability, and external invasions weakened Rome. The empire divided into eastern and western halves. In the west, cities declined and authority fragmented. In 476 CE, the last Western emperor was deposed. Rome did not vanish. Its legacy endured in law, language, architecture, and governance. The Eastern Empire continued for centuries. Roman roads shaped future nations. Roman law became the foundation of modern legal systems. Even in ruin, Rome remained alive. As night falls over the Forum, broken columns stand beneath the moonlight. Stone roads stretch into darkness. The echoes of footsteps, debates, and legions linger in the air. Ancient Rome reminds us that civilizations are built not only with power, but with structure, memory, and vision. As the night deepens and the world grows quiet, the journey through humanity's earliest civilizations slowly comes to rest. Across rivers, deserts, mountains, and seas, ancient societies rose, flourished, and faded. Yet they were never truly lost. Their ideas, struggles, and achievements continue to echo through the modern world, shaping how we live, think, and remember. The first civilizations did not know they were building history. They sought food, shelter, safety, and meaning. Along the rivers of Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus, and China, people learned to cooperate, to plan for the future, and to record their lives. Writing emerged not to glorify the self, but to organize the community. From simple marks in clay and bone grew language, law, and memory. Across these early worlds, humans asked the same questions. Why do floods come and go? What lies beyond death? Who should rule, and by what right? In temples, palaces, and homes, rituals were performed to bring order to uncertainty. Gods reflected nature's power and humanity's hopes. Though the names changed, the search for meaning remained constant. Cities became expressions of collective effort. Streets were planned. Walls were raised. Water was controlled. In the Indus Valley, cleanliness and order shaped daily life. In Rome, roads and aqueducts connected distant lands. In China, harmony between heaven and earth guided governance. These civilizations understood that survival depended on shared responsibility. Power rose and fell. Kings and emperors claimed divine authority, yet no ruler escaped time. Empires expanded, clashed, and collapsed. The Hittites mastered diplomacy. The Greeks questioned authority. The Romans built systems meant to last forever. Each civilization believed, in its own way, that it had found balance. History quietly reminded them that change is inevitable. Knowledge became humanity's most enduring inheritance. Mathematics, astronomy, medicine, and engineering were refined across centuries. Techniques were shared along trade routes. Ideas crossed borders even when armies could not. What one civilization began, another continued. Progress was not isolated, it was cumulative. Art and storytelling preserved the human experience. From cave sanctuaries to marble temples, creativity transformed stone and pigment into memory. Myths carried lessons about pride, courage, love, and loss. Epic poems and quiet prayers captured emotions still felt today. These stories survived because they spoke truths deeper than time. Despite their achievements, ancient civilizations were fragile. Climate shifts altered rivers. Earthquakes shattered cities. Droughts emptied fields. When systems failed, people adapted or moved on. Collapse was not the end of humanity's journey, but part of its rhythm. From ruins, new cultures emerged, shaped by what came before. Modern life carries the fingerprints of the ancient world. Laws trace their roots to Mesopotamia and Rome. Philosophy echoes Greece. Urban planning recalls the Indus Valley. Bureaucracy and record-keeping reflect ancient China. Even our calendars, alphabets, and concepts of time are inherited from civilizations long gone. Yet beyond knowledge and structure, ancient civilizations leave us something quieter. They remind us that human beings have always sought connection, to land, to each other, and to something greater. They remind us that progress is built slowly, through patience, effort, and shared belief. And they remind us that nothing endures without care. As you rest, imagine the rivers flowing endlessly beneath moonlight. The Nile, the Tigris, the Indus, the Yellow River, all still move through the earth, as they did thousands of years ago. Above them, the same stars once watched over the first cities, the first laws, the first dreams of immortality. The ancient world is not asleep. It lives in language, in stone, in thought. It lives in every road traveled, every story told, every question asked. Civilization is a journey without an end, one chapter leading quietly into the next. And now, as this journey fades into the calm of night, the voices of the past grow soft. They have told their story. The rest is carried forward, gently, by those who remember.